All right, welcome everybody. Look, we're going to recap not the Cup off week, but the series that were on this weekend and the first time winner that happened at what's old is new again, Rockingham Speedway. We're also going to give some grades for NASCAR teams in all three series, how they've done through the first 1/5 or so, first 20% at least of the Cup Series season. And we're going to talk about Cleetus McFarland, what's next for him, how we think he did, looking ahead to Bristol, and, well, are there any races this season that could get moved around? Like we've seen the F1 races in April get moved around with the strife in the Middle East. Yeah, that's all right here on the 5 to Go podcast. And welcome in. And don't look sideways or shake your computer or phone screen right here if you are watching us on YouTube and you're not seeing this if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or GoPRN.com. But only two of us are in the booth today, the virtual booth, that is. I'm your co-host, Doug Fireball Turnbull, from the traffic team at 11 Alive News with Rachel Cox-Rosen here in Atlanta, Georgia, and a columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and happy to be on with you all. And hey, if you're in the Atlanta area, might as well, while I'm doing all the plugs, host of the Thursday night trivia show at the Iron Horse Tavern in Norcross every Thursday at 8 p.m. when I wake up at 4 a.m. the next day. Makes total sense, okay? Come on out and see my trivia show, too. Just throw all the plugs out there, just like I do at the trivia show. I'm glad to be on with you today. Not joining us, and he tells us, and I believe him, but I'm not looking it up, for the first time in 3 years, our man who is working hard at Culver's this week, although he's a University of North Georgia grad, hashtag hire Devin Kupka. He wants to be broadcasted or PRing or something, but he is working hard at Culver's here and actually going to help open a store after the Bristol race weekend in North Carolina. He couldn't join us today, but he wishes everybody well, and he will actually be co-hosting the show with Dan a couple of weeks from now when I'm off on vacation. So Devin getting his quote vacay in, although he is working. And Devin and I will be in Bristol this weekend, rooming together, in fact, driving up and back separately, unfortunately, but rooming together. And I'll be there with the Performance Racing Network, helping call pit road with our bevy of announcers, and he will be covering things on YouTube, Facebook group, and social media for the 5 to Go podcast. Getting some good driver audio for sure, so be sure to check that out. Join us on here, not going, I don't think anyway, to Thunder Valley this weekend. He is the master maker of speed in Dawsonville, 2018 Georgia Racing Hall of Fame inductee, and 1988 Cup Series championship winning mechanic. He's flanked by a Thunderbird in there, it looks like. Dawsonville Dan Elliott, how you doing?
Doing good. Hope everybody is well. Yeah, I'm ready to get back into the swing of things because with the off weekend, it's kind of like it's not that you're in a fog, but it's like the world is not in sync because we missed a weekend of Cup racing. And I'm looking forward to Bristol and some of the other tracks coming up and kind of getting an idea of how these drivers are going to shake out as we continue to progress, because up to now for me, it's certainly been different in what I've thought that was going to happen for the start of the year and how it's turned around and actually happened for the start of the year.
Now, you say things are happening differently, you said, than you thought at the start of the year. Do you care to share one of those things?
Easy. That is 2311 and the domination that they showed right out of the gate. And I really thought 2 races was really exceptional. And I thought that was really good to set the momentum. But then they come in and cap that with 2 more. And curious to see with how they ran at Martinsville if they come back and run better at Bristol. So kind of looking forward to the races coming and definitely the different racetracks, because as I've told you before, usually for these tracks, it's how the driver really likes a racetrack, and it really does make a difference on how a driver thinks about and does at a particular racetrack and whether they like it or don't. I remember some of the first races that Bill went to and the tracks that he really liked to go to, and whether he had the car to beat or not, because at that time, early in the career, we didn't have the car to beat, but he usually always ran the best races at the tracks he loved to go to the best. So I you kind of look at that and say, well, you've got drivers that either love to go to Darlington or they love to go to Bristol or Michigan or or wherever it might be. And those are the drivers that can help carry the team if the team gets behind or they don't exactly have the car that is the top car of the day. The driver can usually, he counts bonus points for being able to carry the car or the crew or something that's happened during that day, and usually have a better finish based on the fact that it's a racetrack he loves to run at.
Yeah, yeah. And there's something about between the ears. We talk about it here. It's hard to quantify. In fact, you talked about in the episode after Denny Hamlin's Las Vegas win, the mental edge he has to go and grab a win. That's something. By the way, he kind of had the inverse happen at Martinsville there, where he lost the track position. But the mental edge, maybe it's the confidence you lose, or maybe you get hurt and you have that split second of hesitation. That's the word I'm looking for. I hesitated to say hesitate. Yes. Or in this case, just, I love this racetrack. I hate this. And in fact, I've heard different drivers say, you could sit there and talk about how much you hate Daytona and Talladega and that kind of drafting style racing. Or you could go out there and finish well, like instead of just saying I hate it each time, swipe left, actually go out and do it. And it's the same thing with these short tracks. What did Kyle Petty, he had the famous quip about Darlington. They should fill it up with water and make it into bass fishing. And yeah, he didn't love Darlington, but he loved Rockingham and ran great. And sure, he went there with good cars, but there was something about it that clicked. And that's hard to even see on a timesheet. And it's hard to separate from the equipment you're in, but some people just understand it more than others. Just like Shane Van Gisbergen and Connor Zilic on road courses, right? Hey, so before we talk any more about the Cup Series and potentially handing out some hardware to 2311 and our Phantom benchmark or checkpoint of the season here, I want to talk about the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the Craftsman Truck Series. ARCA Menards East also ran this weekend at Rockingham Speedway. We'll get to that in a second, but we'll start here with the O'Reilly Series on Saturday. They ran Saturday afternoon, and there was a first-time winner, a guy that, frankly, I expected to win a lot earlier in this, and he struggled like Dickens last season and even had a tough start to this year, and that's William Sawalich. William Sawalich from Minnesota, that sophomore driver for Joe Gibbs Racing, number 18. He took the victory there, led 80 laps too, did so handily. The dominant car of the day was another guy who hasn't won yet, Dan, and Corey Day, who had the field covered and then lost track position when they had to retighten some lug nuts at some point midway through the race. And it was hard to pass there. The pavement's still newer at Rockingham. It got repaved a few years ago. So that was one of the complaints about it, even though they did have tire wear. Brent Cruz also looked like he could be cruising to his first career win. They took 2 tires on a pit stop, and then they had something else go wrong with the car later in the race, and he actually had to pit and lost a bunch of laps. So William Sawalich was your winner, and handily. He held off his teammate Brandon Jones. How about the JGR cars finishing ahead of Junior Motorsports? The guy that's won 4 times this season, make that 3 times this season, right? Yeah, 3 times, whatever. Justin Algaier, he finished 3rd in the race. We're going to talk about the point standings in a moment. I got a stat there that's, whoa, okay. He finished 3rd. Rajah Caruth looked quick again, back in his home car, the number 88. He'll be in the 32 this weekend at Bristol. He finished 4th. Carson Quapple, his teammate, that puts 3 JRM drivers in the top 5, finished 5th. And then Sheldon Creed, Taylor Gray, Parker Retzlaff, Ryan Sieg, and the aforementioned Corey Day rounded out the top 10. Also in that race was Cleetus McFarland, who had a near spin out early in the race. I actually didn't see that part. And there were several other times that either were caught on camera or he talked about afterwards where he just almost handed it in. Said that's the hardest racing by far he's ever done in his life. And while he got up into the back of the 20s, he ended up finishing in the 32nd position. He spun out late in the race there. Didn't collect anybody or anything like that, but he did spin out late in the race and finished 32nd, 6 laps down. But he didn't wreck his car, didn't wreck anybody else, completed the day. So we got Cleetus McFarland on one end, William Sawalich on the other. Dan, I know you were only able to check sparingly this weekend, but what is a big takeaway for the O'Reilly Series?
This goes to show you how difficult any of this stuff is, and no matter what your level of experience is, and it does come down to experience for sure, and even coming down to simulator time and everything that you can add to your resume of experience that you can get, everything that you can get still isn't enough. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you're still going to come up, as the saying used to be, I left a lot on the table. Well, yeah, it's evident that a lot was left on the table. But thing about it is you definitely don't come into this overnight unless you really are a prodigy in this, and you can get into one of these cars, because Cleetus may be one of the drivers where trucks, O'Reilly's, whatever the series is, maybe one of those that you favor one better than the other, and you don't know till you get into a certain car may favor your characteristics better. So maybe we've just not seen that combination where everything lines up, and even down to what we talked about even the racetrack and the style driving you are somewhat accustomed to. I just think the experience level here is lacking, and I would love to see more time spent either in ARCA or something else to get more time in the cars that you're going to be driving.
Yeah, it would be good to have more seat time for sure, because Rockingham, unlike these weird unicorns that are Talladega, Daytona, and to a certain extent Atlanta, although Atlanta really is its own thing, Rockingham really has it all. It's got live pit stops. You had long green flag runs, tire fall off, getting lapped, which at Talladega, Daytona, unless you lose the traffic, you don't really get lapped in the sense here where you need to pick a line and, don't go these guys' ways and don't spin out in front of them. It's just totally different. I almost feel like, well, I have two thoughts of this, and I shared them with you before the show, Dan. Number one is, Cleetus McFarland did just about what everybody said, except maybe with that spin out and also spinning someone else out. He didn't wreck his car. He finished the race, but it showed no competitiveness. Was the second slowest car in the field, I think, in qualifying or something ridiculous like that. And the thing is we don't hold these no-name drivers to that standard. They come in and they run with a garbage team. This wasn't garbage. This was Childers. They go garbage team, driver I've never heard of, second to last on the speed chart. Nobody cares. And if they showed up to Talladega, none of us would complain about it, because they don't even garner a scintilla of attention. But yet Cleetus McFarland, because he is well known as part of the reason he is there and got the good ride, it's like, oh man, should this be allowed? And the truth is, it should be the same standard for both. And we're not really holding the other drivers that don't get any attention to the same standard, because we don't even know their name hardly. There's who is, and I'm just picking a name on the entry list this week, Logan Bearden, and he's run races off and on the last few years. We don't know how qualified they are or not, but yet we somehow are experts on Cleetus McFarland. But what I like about what's going on here is, because he has such a big platform, he is telling, he kind of came in saying, hey, I'm going to Talladega Nights this and maybe end up at Daytona one day. And he is being humbled. And I think his humility is real. I think he is coming out and go, wow, here I am. I'm racing these Crown Vics. I'm doing all these crazy races and stunts, and I've got car control, and I know how to drift. And then I get in one of these things where I think they're just turning left, and I'm 6 laps down, almost spinning out. I cannot replicate Jesse Love's line, my teammate, the champion last year. And he is being open in his humility and open in that, hey, I know I don't deserve it, but I got an opportunity. I'm going to make the best of it. And so that's the part that doesn't make it into the cultural zeitgeist and into the discussion, is how hard it is, even in the O'Reilly or Truck Series that are less competitive than Cup, to do this. So I like that he's exposing that. I think, Dan, the test should be you go run Talladega first. And I know I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but I think the drivers, anybody I've heard talking about it, agrees Talladega and Daytona way easier than Rockingham. Why wasn't Talladega an entree to Rockingham? And I'm saying that tongue in cheek. I know why. It's the size of the track and the speeds, but it's like the short tracks and stuff really expose you more than the super speedways.
Yeah, in some way they do, but what scares me the most is still Daytona and Talladega, because you just don't even fathom how fast things are happening and how quick you can get yourself or somebody else into trouble. And I think that to go there without some level of experience in drafting other than a Crown Vic would be ludicrous to me, because you've got to know how quickly you can get in trouble and how much you risk everybody else when you do get in trouble. And I know that used to be the standard, was these super speedways, to run super speedways. That was what they looked at, whether you came through ARCA or whatever you got your experience through. And I think the standard should hold true more so today than ever, because you've got everything in this little box as far as going through the rules, and the cars are all packed up together as you run these events. They don't get spread out like they used to do before the plate racing, before the segment racing, or the segments that you have. And my point is you get packed up more now, more times than not. You don't have very much separation at all, so you can get yourself and a lot of other people in trouble so much easier. But this may come a deal to where that he loves Talladega, or he's a duck in water at these racetracks like this, and you may get the opportunity to see him run extremely well. But given the experience level that I think on this track, and I'm going to be surprised.
Yeah, and there's some talk is that will he actually be allowed in a couple of weeks to run Talladega? We don't know. By the time of this recording, we don't know. We're recording on Tuesday, April the 7th. We don't know. All right, so we'll see what happens there. And I hope it's successful for him. I'm not rooting against him. I'm okay if they pump the brakes a little bit. Hey, some more ARCA. But, and here's what people that we don't talk about, that don't gain the headlines, run into. Even Daniel Suarez with his sponsorship package, that the little money he brings along in Cup. A lot of these sponsors, especially once they get a taste of O'Reilly or Cup, they're not ready to go backwards. So if you have a funding mechanism and you could run a full season of ARCA or 5 races in O'Reilly, some are going to pick the 5 races in O'Reilly. And I'm making the numbers up. It could be more races. I'm not saying
Doug,
ARCA
you look at that like Daddy did when we first got started. You look at that like my dad did, and you look at the races and how much those races pay.
Sure,
it isn't the fact of maybe I'd rather run one series or the other, but you look at the pay sheet and see which one's more beneficial for you.
Sure, and with the sponsors factored in now even more than they were then, it's kind of the same deal. Is my sponsors want me to be seen at Daytona and Talladega, not as much at an ARCA East race in Hickory. Not as much in the ARCA East at Hickory. All right. But the ARCA, we could probably both agree that the ARCA series, having a full bit of that under your belt and really understanding what spotter lingo, and they don't have the green flag pit stops really in ARCA, but that just different things like that, getting on and off pit road, run some truck races and build your way up. He's only 30, he just turned 31 years old, I think, actually Sunday, the Easter Sunday. So I think that's the way it should happen, but it rarely in this sport happens the way it should happen. The same way Nick Sanchez loses his ride, it literally doesn't have one right now, or why Corey Heim is not a full-time driver in the Cup Series. How it should happen and how it does happen. Show me the money, right?
Show me the money.
So Brent, now William Sawalich here, he's someone that has been really so poor, he's been off the radar. He's been an 18th place kind of car. A driver car, whatever, with Joe Gibbs Racing. I hope that this is what the turnaround they need, and I think I'm going to go look at his results here, kind of over the last few weeks, as step up a little bit. But Dan, I know you don't watch that series as closely, but have you seen anything out of him that makes you feel like they could turn it around? Because he was a barn burner when he was in ARCA and ARCA East too.
No, I haven't, and I haven't followed them close enough to really jump in and pick out any points that I think would be beneficial to the conversation. But the fact that he ran so good, that to me is one of the points that I look at. But one track, and I know that, like I said, I know he's been running good, so Given that, I'm kind of at the point where I have to wait and see where this goes from
Yeah.
here, and get a more broader range of racetracks under the belt first,
No
all
doubt. No
around,
doubt.
all around different racetracks.
No doubt. And he had kind of pedestrian results at Darlington and he had a top 10 in Vegas, but Darlington and Martinsville were, top 20 back in the top 20 without getting too
Mhm.
specific on things. And as it stands right now, he is 11th in the standings, only 11 points to the good. No, excuse me. That's bad math. He is actually 41 points to the good on the cutoff line. They have 12 drivers that make the playoffs. I want to point something out about the O'Reilly points, and I know it's early. They've run 8 races, though, out of 33 this year. That's a quarter of the season. Even a bigger percentage than the Cup Series has run now. Justin Allgaier not only has 3 wins in 8 races and 7 top 10s, he doesn't even have the most laps led. That belongs to Jesse Love. But Justin Allgaier has a 126-point lead on second place Jesse Love. If you wanted to go 126 behind Jesse Love, Dan, you would have to go all the way down to Sam Mayer. Actually, if Jesse Love were to lose another 126 points, he would fall all the way to 13th in the standings.
Whoa.
He would be 13, 2 points ahead of Ryan Sieg in 14th. That's how big Justin Allgaier's lead is, number one. And number two, how competitive the front third of the O'Reilly field is. That
God, are
126
you already
points.
giving them the championship? Is that what I'm hearing here?
I'm not. No, I'm not into that because they're doing that with Reddick. It's like, dude, you could have 3 bad races and somebody else could catch fire. Somebody else could turn into Allgaier. Jesse Love could turn into Allgaier, or I don't know which driver. That's the thing, is they all kind of profile similarly to me. Who's going to go off and win 3 or 4 races right now that's not a Cup driver? And I don't see it in O'Reilly, and I think that's why. He has 120 stage points, does Allgaier, and Jesse Love has had a heck of a year. He's got the third most stage points. Love does, 75. Carson Kvapil has 81 stage points, but is 6th in points. He doesn't have the finishes to show for it just yet. So just really interesting stuff. So I told you how close 2nd to 13th is in the O'Reilly standings, just to buzz those drivers down so you kind of have an idea where maybe some of your guys stand. Jesse Love is 2nd in points. Sheldon Creed 3rd. Austin Hill is 4th. Corey Day has climbed 2 spots to 5th. Man, remember when he couldn't drive, Dan? Everybody's like, man, this guy needs to go to ARCA or something. He's 5th in points, and he's had several good finishes in a row, 7 top 10s in 8 races. Hasn't crashed anybody in a few weeks, all right? And he had the best car a week ago. 6th in points, I mentioned Carson Kvapil. Sammy Smith is 7th. Brandon Jones, 8th. Now listen to this. Parker Retzlaff, 9th in the points for Viking Motorsports. He is turning a lot of heads. I keep talking about him on this show, man. When is one of these big teams going to get him hooked up, okay? Now, they've done it for other drivers that have less results. Let's find it for Retzlaff. I know it's Show Me the Money, okay? Raja Karuth, 10th. Now Sawallich is up to 11th. Taylor Gray is 12th, the last driver in on points. Sam Mayer, the first driver out of these standings, 13th in the points. And he is actually 30 points out of 12th, Sam Mayer is. And he's had a couple of he was dead last at Rockingham and way back in Martinsville with some mechanical and other issues too there, Dan. So I don't know anything. And again, I know you don't follow the series as close. Anything besides Justin Allgaier jump off the page to you there?
No, but it's almost as if that maybe Algaier and the team's thinking, well, obviously it looks like nobody else is wanting to run up front and get points or lead in the points or be competitive in the points, and we're going to get them while we can get them. I've heard people joke around like that. It's like nobody else wants it, and the question becomes is the team and the driver that much better than everybody else, or is things just in their favor right now, and is the tide going to turn? I think that's the magic question: is when or if the tide turns.
And also, let's figure we have had a driver or 2 or 3 go off each season in O'Reilly's for most of the last few years. Yeah, there was a year where you kind of had this big three deal. I'm trying to remember the different years, but you've had, Gregson and Cole Custer and guys just go win gobs of races. Of course, it was Connor Zilic a year ago. It's kind of like it's just an Algaier, and who else? Who's going to stick their head up? Because for one, Joe Gibbs doesn't have the All-Star car anymore. Joe Gibbs doesn't have that 19 that Almirola was running and doing different things in, where he popped off, won a few races. You haven't. It's probably should be Jesse Love or Austin Hill, but Childress is just a little bit behind in the speed department when it's not a super speedway. So yeah, who's it going to be? And then one of these bucks that hadn't gotten their first win yet, who are in similarly prepared Hendrick or JRM Chevrolets, Rajah Caruth, Carson Quapple, Corey Day. They also jump off the page. And hey, Williams Wallace is going, don't forget about me. I just won one. I'd like to win 4 more. The same with Brent Cruz, who has not won yet. So this series has kind of got the yin and the yang on different sides of it too. And a really robust middle class who's not necessarily running up front, but is doing okay. Now, this second truck race in a row that Corey Heim has just put a whipping on him. 178 of 200 laps led for driver Heim here. Hashtag Georgia drivers, by the way, who technically now leads the truck standings, although he won't be eligible for playoffs. He also has a chance, Dan, to sweep the Triple Truck Challenge, which will get him $500,000 if he wins. He's already gotten 50 and I think 100,000. Now $500,000 if he wins the third Triple Truck Challenge race in a row on Friday night at Bristol Motor Speedway. He was being chased down by the truck that he drove a year ago, and his teammate, Caden Honeycutt, who finished second in the race. The rest of the top 5, Lane Riggs, Stuart Friesen, and Grant Enfinger. But, Dan, that was a Corey Heim butt-whooping, and I just want to know what the plan is. There is some piece of the puzzle here, Dan, that we don't know as to what's keeping Corey Heim from being in the Cup Series or if he's going to be there in the next year. Because I don't see which driver moves without show me the money. But there's got to be a plan somewhere that we just don't know that's going to get this guy into Cup very soon, I think.
That's
anyway.
it. Yep, that's it, Doug. As far as these moves, it is almost as if there are so many things that we don't know and how all of this system operates behind the scenes as to who gets rides, who don't, who's considered, who don't, even down to who's if a driver gets injured or is unable to drive, who's the fill-in and who's the substitute. So given this, there is so much that we don't know about that, but there seems to be something amiss here, the reason that he hadn't got a good ride out of this so far. And I'm like you, it's beyond being able to explain what's going on and what we're missing here on the factor of moving up the chain.
You would have thought he would have been, and we've said it before, and no shade on Chase Briscoe. I think we talked about it last week. You would have thought Heim would have been the leading contender for the 19 car, Truex, and they went outside of the Toyota umbrella, even though they're breeding all of these drivers. None of them they felt were quite ready yet. And I think it's just because Heim is a 2311 driver, and Heim has had beef with Ty Gibbs, and we have learned, especially in recent times, it seems like all roads lead to Ty Gibbs through Joe Gibbs Racing. Just kind of been the truth, right? And they had some beef in ARCA and things like that, and it hasn't worked out. I don't know if he's run any, or he's barely run any O'Reilly races for Gibbs when they had some open races, and now it seems like it's been Kyle Busch Motorsports, Tricon Garage, 2311, and a little bit of Sam Hunt Racing. And this year, the Sam Hunt cars are full. So Corey Heim wins, though, and it's hard to figure out because you've got so many part-timers winning in trucks. And we mentioned this before, and they've taken a lot of attention and things like that. It's sort of hard to figure out who the actual truck series contenders are, so to speak. Because ThorSport has been winless now for a year and a half. Lane, the front row trucks, Lane Riggs look really good. Caden Honeycutt still hasn't won yet. Looks really good. The Ram 5-car team, that's in flux. And then you've got a lot of guys circulating out of the Spire trucks. They don't have a full-time driver in Spire. Most of the niche trucks are people rotating in and out of them. And so it feels like Tricon Garage is the best team, but the best driver is one that's not even running for the whole deal. Also a team I didn't mention, McAnally Hillman Racing, 5 trucks. They have been persona non grata this year. They have taken a step back in speed, and that includes Tyler Ankrum, who won this Truck Series race on fuel mileage a year ago. He only managed sixth place back on Friday late afternoon there. He finished sixth. Corey LaJoie, his first foray driving kind of full-time now in the trucks as he got put into the 10 truck with Daniel Dye's departure from Ram Racing after the whole suspension and controversy there. Corey LaJoie ends up finishing seventh back on Saturday. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to figure out, Dan, who the contenders there are, because just like with O'Reilly, Algaier versus the world, here it's Heim versus the world, except Heim isn't even a full-time truck driver. So that's got to be frustrating if you're one of the other guys, right?
Got to be. To be able to sit back there and watch all this stuff happen and really feel like you can't do anything about it. But Doug, how much are we missing on, it'd be nice to know kind of the budget of some of these truck teams and know what's being spent or what they can spend or what's being done in that respect, because we've heard that before on how much budget a lot of these teams are getting, and it's almost like we're missing a factor here on being able to calculate how much money they've got to spend, and it looks like, obviously money is the common denominator of it all, and there's where we can't get in and see what that formula is and how much they've got to spend. But I think that has more to do with what we're looking at now than anything is where's the money being spent? Have you got the money to spend on this? And I think that the teams that are doing the best obviously are the most well funded. So, but you've got drivers that deserve to be in better equipment that could do better if they were, but you're not going to see it until that budget, until they do get the ability to spend that money and make the deal, make their organization better in that respect.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's hard to climb that ladder too, because it takes a lot of money even to run top 10 there, for sure. And it just seems like that with the Toyota money that's coming into Tricon Garage, Toyota, I think, is spending a lot in comparison to Ford and Chevrolet, and I'm sure spending more than Ram. As much as Ram is putting in, it just seems like the product shows that Toyota with that pipeline has just really got a robust development effort. Mark Martin was this week on Door Bumper Clear with Dirty Mo Media with Freddie Kraft and Tommy Baldwin and the whole gang there. And Mark Martin said Ford, because they asked him, hey, Ford is basically down to one car left in O'Reilly, and the 25 team, Nick Sanchez, they're not entered to Bristol again. And it sounded like the 5-team of Hettinger Racing is going to take some time off just because they're behind on bills and things. That's what they said. So they asked Mark Martin, what's up with that? Why the Ford? WTF? What the Ford? And he said Ford has always been, and you know this better than I do, Dan, tight with their purse strings, outside of like the Cup Series product on the track. They've always been tighter with money than everybody else. Dan, you've always talked about the driver development thing too. We talked about it last week, but when you also have that going against you, different manufacturers' agendas, where Ford and GM are spending a ton in Formula One right now with brand new partnerships and teams, it doesn't leave as much left over for the lowly truck series. And I say lowly in the grand scheme. I don't think they're lowly.
No, I certainly feel the pain of that one, because definitely I feel that we've been there, done that. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the thinking is, Doug, on where Ford's at on their programs. I certainly scratch my head over some of the decisions. I scratch my head over a lot of the decisions they've made, and even down to the Cup side of things. It seems like they're still not spending the money on the Cup side, even that I feel like it's going to take to pull out consecutive championships or even a championship, even though Ford has been very successful in the last couple of years of pulling together championships. But it's come down to really one organization, if memory serves me correct, and definitely skill and luck and everything else that you can say has fell into place in that, because I feel like if they'd have been any other place maybe but Phoenix, that might not have happened. I'm not so sure, but that's one of the tracks that they seem to, drivers and cars seem to do well there. It seems like the whole organization across the board does well at that racetrack, and maybe, I can't wait to see, because we go to Homestead this year for that last race. Is that where we go to?
Yes.
Okay, I
But
can't
it's
wait.
the last of 10 races. It's not the championship.
Correct.
All holds barred or no holds barred, so to speak.
But I want to kind of compare Homestead with the results of Phoenix to see who comes out on top at that track. Doesn't mean the championship. That's not what I'm saying. It's just how well the Fords do at Homestead.
Well, I totally, and I mean, especially if it's close, right? Who's going to be dialed in the most? And Penske's been dialed in there before. We've seen Ryan Blaney almost pull it
Yep.
off in that epic Tyler Reddick win in 2024. That was just that clutch moment that showed what that driver was made of before a winless 2025, and then of course the breakout here in this season. So, but yeah, Corey Heim versus the world, and there's some talk. Well, maybe they can make him eligible for the truck championship, but I don't. That's not going to happen. They willfully skip races. Now we could argue though, should the rule be taken away that you have to run all the races to win the championship? Because if you have the reason that rule is put in place in more recent years goes all the way back to the wild card spot in NASCAR's playoffs back in 2011. They entered that rule. Trevor Bayne, and it got tested the first week. Trevor Bayne won the Daytona 500. They had added a wild card position into the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. They had expanded the field from 10 to 12, and they had said that last position would be the highest driver ranked inside the top 20 that had won a race, instead of being 12th in points. So maybe people would do something crazy if you're 19th in points to win. Trevor Bayne goes out, race number 1, part-time schedule, Wood Brothers, wins the Daytona 500. Oh, man, you're going to run the full season, try to get top 20 point? And then they didn't. And they wouldn't have. They wouldn't have. They go out the next week and finish bum last or something at Phoenix. So, but that's where the rule came from, is to prevent people when we had our first version of Win and You're In a few years before the elimination playoffs, from snookering people running a 6-race schedule or, doing something weird, right? And then, of course, with the elimination playoffs, winning you're in, doesn't matter where you are as long as you're top 30 in points, that would have done the same thing. And that's why you have playoff waivers and all this stuff. So now you still have playoff waivers, but it's just not as stringent because you can miss a race and still finish where you are in the chase, right? It's really more about points. So, yeah. All right, now here's what I want to do with the Cup Series, Dan. This may be your least favorite thing that we do, the most sports talky thing that we do. Just like we're trying to predict stuff and that, but it's to give grades. All right, we're not going to grade each team. We don't have time. We're 38 minutes in. We said we'd be shorter today. Okay, but what we want to go through the Cup Series, especially. Here we are, 5th of the way through the Cup schedule, and we want to. I want to ask you, Dan. Number 1, who's at the top of the class, or who's the valedictorian, organization-wise or driver-wise, right now? You can pick either one. Use either to talk about both. But who would you say is top of the class, or valedictorian, or head of the pack, regardless of whether it's a surprise or not?
You've got to look at 2311. Whether you agree or whether you don't, you've got to look at 2311, because I look at where they came from on the. First of all, let's go back to the lawsuit and the focus that took off of. Somewhat looking on the outside, looking in, the focus that would have taken off the organization, and not knowing what the final outcome of that was going to be. And for them to go to court, go through this litigation, do all the things that they're doing, stay focused inside the shop, and do everything that they could possibly do to separate themselves, let the court proceedings fall where they may. We do our work and focus on what we're doing, and we get ready for Daytona. That to me looked like the choice of what had to be made at the shop, is regardless of what happens over here, we've got to stay focused over here. We cannot lose focus on what we're doing. We've got to go with this at our own our own idea, our own goal, so to speak, on what we want to do. Regardless of what happens over here, we know what we want to do. So they prepare the cars, they get all ready, and they go to Daytona, and they set off on a 4-race deal that no one really, I don't think, expected or anticipated.
No.
Or you
No.
could even fathom, because I would have thought in that if anybody would have gone off and done that, would have been, to me, number one was probably been Denny.
Yeah.
He might have been capable of that, but he hasn't been. But that organization, but one person for the most part, Reddick, has carried that so far himself
He
out of that.
has.
Yeah.
He has.
So
But Bubba's run similarly to, by the way, to what he did last year. He started getting a lot more consistent last year with top tens, and he's got 4 in the first 7 races. And another yardstick of where 2311 is run, Dan, it's not that he's running great, but Riley Herbst at least is cracking the top 20 organically. So that shows that everything's moving better. It's not just Reddick suddenly coming back to life
Correct.
again.
It's not just one
when you're
person.
that much. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, if you're just a little bit better, it can end up meaning a lot of things if you were already close to the top. And Ryan, or not Ryan, excuse me, in Tyler Reddick's case, he was already close to the top. He just was that close to not winning all these different times last year, that close to winning, I mean, and here we are. Here we are. So, okay, you're saying 2311 head of the class. Hard to argue against that, although it looks to me that despite what it says on the ledger sheet about Joe Gibbs racing and Chase Briscoe being back in the points, you know, 3 of their other 3 drivers are in the top 7, and it's not like Briscoe most weeks has lacked any speed. They've run about where they've expected to run. They just don't have as much to show for it there. Penske's kind of buck-toothed when it comes to results. There's Ryan Blaney than the other guys, although we made a case last week for Austin Cindric running a lot better. And Hendrick is good, but it's not Hendrick good, or it's almost great, but not Hendrick great. Chase Elliott, of course, the most recent winner there, Martinsville. So I would agree with you that 2311 is the front of the class. Now, would you say they're also most surprising, Dan? You know, the most surprising in a good way, or most improved, or something like that, one of those superlatives?
I would, and as you alluded to a few minutes ago, it's not just one driver, it is across the board. It seems like that they have moved them up one level on the bar to where that performance-wise, because you've had a couple of instances where maybe they haven't finished exactly where the performance level would have been, but circumstances relegated the day to something different. Something happened, whether it be pit road or a wreck or so forth. And we've seen some of the share of pit road things that have happened. I can't recall the latest, but through the course of the year, we've seen the speeding, the loose wheels, the things on pit road, whether it be a near miss on pit road where somebody's pitting or equipment gets moved out of the way by the car, so forth. You've seen things that on pit road that it used to be, Doug, that these things didn't cost you a race. Now you're getting penalized for these things, different from what we started out doing. You're getting penalized for these things. So it affects performance at the end of the day. So used to be pit road may not exactly hurt you as bad, definitely not as bad as it hurts you now. So all that stuff you have to factor in at the end of the day, and the mistakes, just like you were talking about Cleetus, all of this stuff you learn the hard way of, it's not just racing on the track anymore. It's pit road. It's getting in, it's getting out, it's speeding. It's being able to overcome a 1 or 2 second or 3 second pit stop that's not up to par, or something happened that cost you those few seconds. All of that stuff counts in anymore. And it is difficult to overcome this stuff a lot of times, or it puts you in a position where on the racetrack, you're someplace you didn't need to be, and you're caught up in something that you wouldn't have been caught up in. I know, long explanation on this, but it factors in.
Well, no doubt. Yeah, 23-11 has stayed above the fray there.
Mhm.
Hey, I'll go with a good surprising, like, hey, considering, and then a bad one. So here, but it's sort of in the same vein, okay? Ryan Blaney being second in points, despite having one of the, by time wise, slowest pit crews on pit road, and that has to do with some of those extra pit stops they made for loose wheels in multiple races.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Blaney being second in points and having 5 top tens and a win despite that is surprising to me, considering how close the Cup field is. But here's where it shows up. So he actually has a decent amount of stage points. 64 actually leads the series. 54 laps led is all he has led. And to put that in perspective, Tyler Reddick's led 189 first in points. Denny Hamlin third in points. Now, granted, these are Martinsville laps, but 444 laps led. Chase Elliott has led almost twice as many laps as Ryan Blaney, 103. Christopher Bell, second most of the series, 225 laps led. Brad Keselowski, 156. Kyle Larson, 137. Ryan Blaney, 54. So that's surprising to me that he's been able to overcome it, but how much speed he's had to be able to, despite the poor results of pit road. Out of the other side of my mouth, a poor surprise, dare I say most disappointing, Trackhouse. And I know Van Gisbergen, sitting there 14th in points, has turned in some finishes and overcome some spins and finished top 10 in ovals and things like that. But Ross Chastain, persona non grata. Places that he's expected to run good. Hasn't happened for him. And Connor Zilic has struggled more than I expected him to. Speed-wise, not even forget the crashes and stuff, just raw speed-wise, they've struggled a lot. And Chastain, when he had that frustration with Daniel Suarez on pit road in Vegas, he's like, yeah, these guys outrun us all the time. They're faster than us. That frustration boiled over and almost turned into fisticuffs there. So that's a disappointment for me as well. Is there anybody else that's just you're going, what the heck? Disappointed?
Probably to me, I'm not disappointed by no means, but Kyle Larson's performance so far, I really thought that the races, I thought there'd be more laps led or at least more stage finishes for Kyle Larson. And like I said, I'm not picking on anybody, and I don't mean for it to sound that way. It's just I really thought that would be a stronger performance and a better showing at this particular stage in the game so far. And I'll say the same thing to me even about Christopher Bell.
Yeah, and it's strange because Christopher Bell, though, 225 laps led. He's 3 top fives, 4 top tens. He's been right there. But both of those guys in the same vein, why haven't they popped up yet? And
Right.
part of it is because Tyler Reddick has been stealing that thunder. Those wins have got to go somewhere. That's a good point. I think Roush has been, in a good way, RFK, pleasantly surprising. And Spire being all stacked up with each other in points right at the back, kind of like the Roush cars are. 15th, Hocevar, 16th, Suarez, and where's the 71 in McDowell? Was he further back than I thought? Where's McDowell at? Sorry, hold on. Did I just lose my spot here? Oh, they're right
No.
next. Yeah, 15th, 16th, 17th in points. Yes, Van Gisbergen, Hocevar, and sorry, Hocevar, Suarez, and McDowell. Thank you. 15, 16, 17. I don't know what's wrong with me here. Been up since 4 a.m. That's probably what it is. But and they haven't done enough to show me that they're winning. But the fact that they're consistently just taking a little bit off the plate of the big boys. And I know they're spending money they want to have the whole plate to themselves, but taking a little bit off their plate, that's what they probably need to be doing there. Here's the deal, Dan. When I look at this, for instance, the biggest, baddest driver in the Cup Series right now, Tyler Reddick, 4 wins. He's got 5 top 10s and 7 starts. And there are only 2 other drivers that have even 5 top 10s. Ryan Blaney, and who's the other one, do you think?
Chase.
Chase has 4. It's Ty Gibbs.
Ty Gibbs.
Ty Gibbs, after crapping the bed in the first 2 races, has had 4th, 5th, or 6th place finishes all the rest of the races, the next 5. And what that shows to me also is, as much as there's not parity in the win column, there is so much parity in the stage points column.
Yep.
the top tens column. How about that? Justin Allgaier killing them in the O'Reilly series. He has 120 stage points. The leader in stage points in the Cup Series. Granted, there's a whole race less. Okay, so that let's take 15 to 20 points out, but still, is Ryan Blaney with 64. Justin Allgaier, having run one more race, has 120 stage points. Ryan Blaney leads the Cup Series with only 64. And a lot of them have 45, 50, 38. That says something about parity too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. I look at this and I keep wondering in my mind is when is this going to change around? Is this going to flip flop to where the teams that haven't run as well are going to start picking the pace up? Because you've got to know before mid-season that you're going to have to, like I said before Martinsville about Hendrick getting their ducks in a row and getting the organization running on all 8 cylinders and getting all of their cars up running in the top 10, because ultimately that's what you want to do when you're multiple car organizations. You want all of the cars to do extremely well. You don't want to definitely leave anyone behind. But when is this going to flip flop? And what are some of the drivers that we thought were going to be up front or lead laps or stage race or whatever? When are those drivers? When's it going to change around? And I'm looking for that in the next couple of races is what I am. And I'm gonna be surprised if I don't see that change coming pretty quickly now in the tracks that we're getting ready to go to.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Is there anybody else that you just want to point out that's been particularly good or particularly bad? Cup Series.
No, because Reddick's made everybody look so bad in the first 4 races that everybody has looked bad, and it's not and it's not really their fault that they're looking bad. It's just the way the first part of the season has panned out. And like I say, I'm looking forward to some of the other races coming up so that we can get some different comparisons of who we think is going to be strong on all of these different tracks, whether it be a road course, whether it be a short track, whether it be an intermediate, and definitely looking forward to Talladega. That's another one that definitely looking forward to.
Yeah. Yeah, Talladega. That'll be that. Yeah. Somebody, it can't be a name brand driver. It needs to be someone wild that wins that just to change the narrative, right? But all of these guys will be dialed in. Okay, highest ranked driver in the points that doesn't have a top 10 yet is 24th in points, Kyle Busch. Man,
Whoa.
That's tough.
Yeah.
We're now 3 years basically removed from him winning. It was Gateway 2023. I think that was a June race, if I'm not mistaken. Kyle Busch, 24th in points, no wins, nowhere close to winning either. That's the thing. And
All right, Devin,
fighting,
do you think that Kyle Busch's performance is his problem? Is Childress's problem? Where do you think the true root of the problem is? Is it the driver? Is it the crew? Is it the motors per se? Can you put your finger
it's hard
on
to know. It's probably a little bit of
know.
everything. I mean, he has struggled adapting to this car. It doesn't even have races where you go to like, okay, Kyle, except for maybe a super speedway. He's got 14 more points than Austin Dillon. So he's running a little better than his teammate. Just measured on points. They're only 3 points apart stage point wise, but season points, he's 14 more than Austin Dillon, but each of them 0 top 10s. I think that's organization. And I think if he was, again, remember, Tyler Reddick started winning in that car 3 times in 2022. And then in the first half of 2023, Kyle Busch, the brand new hot shoe in there, wins 3 times. You think, okay, so Tyler Reddick was driving a fast car. Well, they haven't won since then, and the organization has only won those 2 Richmond races that Austin Dillon did since then, the 24 and 25. And there hasn't even been a Richmond or some unicorn track that Kyle Busch you go to like, okay, he's the guy. He has struggled. and the team has. And I think it's the Gen 7 car and just not having feel and not being able to yaw it out and not being able to find the edge. And, I don't know. I don't know if he gets it back just going to another team, because what team is going, and we've said this before, is going to be good enough to give him the speed to overcome when he messes up. And I just don't think a good enough ride that's that much better than the 8 car is going to open up. But Richard Childress Racing has really, really struggled this year. The Wood brothers have too, despite being a Penske house car. They've had a lot of bad luck. Just a lot of guys right on top of each other, like 20th on back in the standings there. And not a peep, by the way. The one I was going to point out, who didn't show up to class at all, Cole Custer. I hate to pick on him. It'd be easy to pick on Cody Ware. But like Cole Custer is supposedly a Hendrick partnership, the 41 Haas factory team, all this different stuff. And they only have 9 more points than Rick Ware. Cody Ware. Like that's tough, man. That's a struggle. That's a struggle. 3 stage points this year for Cole Custer.
It's
0
like
for
a
Ty
straight.
Dillon, 0 for Cody Ware, 1 for Noah Gregson, by the way.
When is all of this going to shake up? When is the tide going to turn on this, and we see some different performances from different people through the field? Do we think that Kyle Busch will win again this year? Do you think it's possible that he could go the rest of the year on a winless streak?
Do I think it's possible that he could? I think it's possible anybody can win. That's the thing, is it's possible that you show up one week. I mean, we never predicted with Austin Dillon and Richmond. So who are we to say, man? I know that's such a cop-out answer, but who are we to say? I don't know. I don't know. I think he could, but I think it's going to take not doing what they're doing right now. It's going to take either super speedway, fuel mileage at a road course, some weird thing. I don't think they're going to go out and just one day show up with something that's way better than everybody else.
So what do you think it's going to take to do that? For some of these other organizations, even Kyle Busch's and other organizations, what is it going to take to do that? Is it totally lack of budget, or are we going to have some crew changes as far as personnel, whether it be crew chief or people back at the office, or what is the deal going to be?
I don't know. I mean, they made some changes at Childress. I don't know. They changed the crew chief on the 8 car to Jim Pullman this year. I think with Kyle Busch being in a contract year, as Doug Rice said on Fast Talk on PRN, GoPRN.com this week, you can't come to the track and do the same thing next year and expect to have the same results.
Yep.
And Kyle Busch is a generational talent, but at some point, I just don't know where he goes. I mean, maybe you see a Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez swap or whatever, but I don't see him climbing the ladder anywhere. I don't see one of those rides, Front Row Motorsports or something. I have no idea. I don't know if you're Front Row Motorsports, you go, I'm going to go get Kyle Busch to replace Noah Gregson and expect anything different to happen.
Well, it's almost
seems like a place.
It's almost as if you need to do that just to get an idea of, well, we've tried everything else. Let's try this. It's one of those things where it seems like we've run out of options. So let's try something, because, as you said, you can't keep doing the same thing and get a different result.
Yeah, I mean, and that seems like a splash that Spire would go and make. But obviously, they're getting really good results with Suarez, so it'd be tough to. It's tough to imagine anything. It's tough to imagine it staying the same at Childress. It's tough to imagine another mid-level team saying, to hell with it, we're going to go get Kyle Busch, and that working out. And it's tough to imagine Kyle Busch having all the musical chairs switch around and him not have anybody either. Like, I can't imagine any of it, but I couldn't imagine him leaving Gibbs either. You called it before I did. You were convinced 4 years ago when we were having this discussion. Maybe I'm just too much of an optimist. I have trouble settling on that. It's just something, we don't know what's wrong, but it's just something is wrong. To move off of that real quick, we're looking ahead to Bristol this weekend as we approach an hour in the show. We're not going to hold y'all up anymore. We've talked so much about the past and this past weekend and the first few races of the year and everything. Bristol appears to have good weather. Basically, to keep it real simple, highs in the 70s, lows in the 40s, little chance of rain. All right? Please, God, no delays. I've got to drive back from Bristol Sunday night to wake up at 2:30 Monday morning to be on 11 Alive because they couldn't find a fill-in for me on Monday morning, okay? So, look, so let's just keep it all on schedule. Devin and I will be up there covering that. Truck race a year ago, it was chilly. It was cold. Man, Andrew Kurland and I were freezing our butts off on pit road covering that. It will be on the PRN consortium that will fuel the NASCAR racing network. And last year, that race was won by Chandler Smith, his first win at Front Row Motorsports. And then we got to the O'Reilly race last year on Saturday. Kyle Larson was in the 17 car and absolutely eviscerated the field. He will be in the 88 car for Junior Motorsports this weekend. Will he repeat? And then Sunday's Cup race was also a Kyle Busch blue and white Chevrolet butt whooping at the hands of the 5 machine as we approach his 1-year winless anniversary, by the way. So those are your winners a year ago. The tires were very questionable Saturday, cold morning in practice, Dan. Then Sunday's race, they were rock hard, or I say rock hard. There was very little uneven fall off, and Kyle Larson dominated the race. The truck race is the only race that's supposed to happen in cold conditions. Well, no, hold on. Let me make sure I got that right. Hold on. Saturday. Did I get that wrong? Hold on. Saturday is a night race. So, okay, Saturday you could have cold conditions and potentially have more fall off. That seems to be the trigger point. And then, so Friday and Saturday are night races, and Sunday's a 3 p.m. race where it'll be at the height of the heat of the day. Dan, I'm just putting all that out there to throw the conditions out there. I told you the winners a year ago. You know what we've seen on track and what we saw in Chase winning just at the short track in Martinsville. Anything that you could translate into this Bristol race?
No, not really. I think as long as you have weather conditions that are favorable for the weekend and it stays dry, I think the racing is the racing. It is the product. So at the end of the night, I think you're going to have good races in all the series. I don't look for any surprises. I do look to see the Hendrick cars, and I do think that I really have been thinking about Christopher Bell. He's been the one that keeps coming to mind that is going to run good there, and I don't know why I feel that way, but I do feel that way that Christopher Bell is going to run good there. So
he won last fall. That'll do it.
I know, and I've got a feeling about him as well, and I still think that based on the fact that Hendrick is trying to, I'm not saying dig out of a hole, but let's say a slow start to the season, I think that those cars are going to perform well there as well. And other than anomalies, that is what I see coming up for Bristol.
Yeah, no doubt. So 22, 23, 24. So I'm looking here. So we're in the 5th year of the next gen car, and we race twice a year at Bristol. That's what it is. It's counting not the Bristol dirt race. So I was sitting there going, why is it we're having the last 8 Bristol races? And I'm going, why isn't it pulling up that? But it's because 2 of those were Bristol dirt. So let's go to the last, I guess, 6 races at Bristol. There we go. Now we get a read on the drive. I'm sitting there trying to figure out why it's counting 2021 as only 6 or 8 races ago. And that makes more sense. Okay, so the last 6 Bristol races on the concrete have been the runs. This will be the 7th one of the Gen 7 era, because remember, we had Bristol dirt back in the spring, like I said. And how do the drivers stack up? And Dan, the clip that we shared on YouTube that we used for our short this week and put on social media was of you saying, there was the stats, but then something different happens in the race week. And we actually made a new PRM promo using that clip because it's so true. But Christopher Bell is, by 25 points, the best driver in the last 6 drivers on the concrete surface at Bristol. That goes back to the spring 2022 race. So Gen 7 era on concrete only. Christopher Bell, 1 win, all finishes in the top 10. Then it goes Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Ty Gibbs. Remember how well he was in a couple of these races. Ty Gibbs and Brad Keselowski, your top 5. The rest of the top 10, Chris Buescher, then Blaney, Briscoe, Byron, and unfortunately, Alex Bowman, who is going to miss this race. This is the last one they've announced he's going to miss. We'll see what his status is coming up there. So Yeah, I like Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson as well, my friend. I think those are going to be good picks, and it's hard to pick Ty Gibbs until he actually wins something. But Ty Gibbs, you know he's going to be feeling it this weekend, and he had it in his bones last time we were there too. I talked to him at the fall race, and he just had that look like, man, and his crew chief did too. Oh, we're going to get us some. It'd be good to see them, Tyler Allen, his crew chief, and him close that deal too. So, any final thoughts for you, Dan? We've talked about Bristol, we've talked about Rockingham. Good to keep that O'Reilly and Trucks. We don't need to rush the Cup Series anywhere else right now. Just let them have their thing and keep Easter an off weekend for Cup. We talked about Cleetus a little bit and gave some grades to the top series there. Dan, anything else in the pocket there? One last thing to close with?
Yeah, the thing about it is, even though I feel good about Bell and Larson running good there, it would really, the anomaly to me would be to see Kyle Busch go there and knock off a win there at Bristol. And we've talked about his performance enough as far as lack of performance, I guess, between what has happened over the last couple of years. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings any at all to see Kyle Busch go there and kick a little backside and have a really good run there. I think a lot of people would like to see that as well.
Yeah, I think. Wait, who was the last one you said?
Kyle Busch.
Kyle Busch, yeah. So Kyle Busch, 19th and no top 10s in the Gen 7 era at Bristol, and he was out to lunch in the spring.
I'm not going to say it's not an anomaly, but I'd still, that still wouldn't hurt my feelings any at all. And what a night that would be to come out and have a win at Bristol.
Yeah, it sure would. Another driver with just nothing on his slate in the Gen 7 era at Bristol is Tyler Reddick, 17th most points, 0 top 10s. And that dates back to his time driving the 8 car too. It's interesting when you see these kind of boiled down like that. Another stat that I didn't share in the show, but it goes back to the overall point standings and season performance. William Byron has, I think it's only 36 laps led this year. He's been up there, been in the mix, but much like Larson, even much like Chase Elliott until Martinsville, just kind of, we're right here. We're never the best car. And if you're never the best, it's hard to lead those laps. Hey, my final thought is this. Dan, you mentioned before the show that you recently passed the anniversary of your father's passing. 1998, wasn't it?
98.
George Elliott. I remember us celebrating his life big time when you were running Gresham Motorsports Park. We had the George Elliott Memorial Race. And you all will be hearing this show the late part of this week here, April 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere around there. Well, this weekend I'll be up at Bristol on April the 12th. What will that be? Sunday? I believe that's Sunday or Monday. Whichever one, but it'll be Sunday. April the 12th is the 12th anniversary of the passing of Captain Herb, who some of you listening know is the inspiration for this show, even being here, the reason I have a career, certainly the reason I'm involved in motorsports, which is really my side career, if you will. But Captain Herb was the man. His birthday was back on April 2nd, so they're only 10 days apart. I always focus on the death day more, and I made a resolution this year to try to focus more on the birthday, and then forgot to mention it last week. So rest in peace, Captain Herb. Rest in peace, George Elliott. And to all of our forefathers and mentors, foremothers as well, people that have poured into us. Just like we were last week, I wanted to end on the high note of He is risen and the meaning of resurrection and forgiveness. And let's leave on that. Let's not forget the people that laid the ground for us, because we all have people that are important to us, even if they are flawed people. And Captain Herb may have certainly had his flaws. I didn't see many of them. He was an incredible guy, and I know your dad was too, Dan. So thanks for letting me say that. And Dan, I know you wouldn't be sitting there in that garage, your original museum, without the work of your father.
It goes across the board. There wouldn't be any of this organization without Daddy's vision, and definitely without the money that got it to the point. As I've always said, it was a series of stepping stones, and any one of those stones had been missing, you wouldn't be where you're at today. And definitely I owe what I am and what I have. I always say I thank God for whose I am, and I thank my parents for who I am. And with saying that, I have um, Daddy left a big pair of shoes for me to fill, and I'm just thankful every day for the values, the morals, the character, the all the things that were taught to us as we grew up, and um, the work ethic far outweighed every other ethic you could have gotten, but the work ethic even that he gave us, and in the fact that he always said, if you want something, you go out and work for it, and it's kind of like one of the movies I'd seen. You earn it. You're
Yeah.
not just given it, you earn it, and I feel like in that respect, both you and I have earned what we are, where we are, because through Captain Herb, your mentor, through Daddy mine, and I'm very thankful that I had my mom and dad, because definitely wouldn't be the person I am today were it not for them.
Amen to that, and amen to the people still living that pour into us as well. And I think about Karen Emery, who I'm still very close with, and my mom, who still supports me. She was literally, while we're recording this, texting me right now. The people fixing my house, they recognize the last name, and it's because they know you. And I'm like, and she's like, I told him I know him, and I'm thinking, Mom, you know me? What? Don't ever say that. You birthed me, girl. I mean, you know me. That's come on now. But yeah, but thank God for the people that pour into us. Our spouses, of course, that put up with me running off and us running off and doing a show that's just a fun golf game. It's really nothing more. But hopefully you get something out of it all too. So again, don't forget the people that laid the ground for you. Thank God for them, and rest in peace, George Elliott and Captain Herb. Folks, thank you all for listening. Thanks to Devin, and we felt bad that we couldn't get this done on his timeline here this week, but it's just, we're all over the place trying to work and hustle and do stuff. He and I will, again, both be covering the action at Bristol Motor Speedway. If you like what you heard or didn't like it, hey, send us a note. Find Devin and myself on social media. We've given you the socials out before, or go to the 5 to Go Facebook page. You can find the clips on Instagram and X and all of those things, and of course on YouTube as well. GoPRN.com. Thanks to that team for posting these up. And some new promos will be in rotation this weekend that have some different clips of Dan and Devin breaking down the sport on Performance Racing Network. And again, those race times on this weekend, which will be on basically versions of PRN and the NASCAR Racing Network. For the truck race, that'll be Friday night, 7:30 trucks. Bristol O'Reilly race is Saturday, 7:30, and then the Cup race Sunday, April the 12th. Rest in peace, Captain Herb, at 3 p.m. The TV networks will be FS1 for Cup and Trucks, and CW for the O'Reilly series. For Dan Elliott, I'm Doug Turnbull. Hope you had a happy Easter. Hope you're enjoying a spring break if you are with your kids, or you yourself are a kid and listening. God bless you. Like, subscribe, follow, all those things, and we'll be back to recap Bristol next week on the 5 to Go podcast. We'll see you then.